Welcome back to Random Signal with me, your host Marco. So, I thought today I would just outline the WHO's 13th situational report, which was became available today online this morning. So, what I'll do is I'll go through the report quickly, then I'll go into an academic paper which I found today, which was released January 31st, I believe. And I'll explain a bit about what the findings of that research was. So, and give some conclusions towards the end. So, firstly, the 13th report, according to my notes here, there were a total of over 14,500 cases, so 14,557 confirmed cases. This brings 2,604 new cases. Outside of China, there were 146 confirmed cases with 14 new cases, according to this current report. So the report also states that there are no new countries that have reported the 2019 and coronavirus strain. So but the report also mentions that there is evidence for the first death outside of China, and that was reported in the Philippines. So the other thing this report mentions, which I should mention, is that the WHO reports here this idea of the infodemic, and what they're trying to reveal here is the fact that there's so much information being disseminated around the world, and according to my notes here, what they refer to as an abundance of information, in which some might be accurate, but some might not be so accurate, or a lot might not be accurate. And so I'm quoting the WHO's the report here, in which they state that it's making it hard for people to find trustworthy sources and reliable guidance when they need it. So obviously, over the last couple of weeks, you've seen a lot of, I've read a lot of reports personally, news like tabloids, that kind of thing, that doesn't seem, or it seems quite suspicious in terms of what it's trying to expound throughout the public. So moving on, so in response to this infodemic, the WHO has kind of put together like a bit of a task force in regards to managing this misleading information and the rumors surrounding the 2019 coronavirus. And so they quote here by saying that it's they're making kind of like a 24-hour a day watch, for example, to identify the most prevalent rumors that can potentially harm the public's health, such as false prevention measures or cures. So on that note, I also dug a bit deeper and found that there were a couple of teams at the Daugherty Institute in Melbourne, Victoria, Australia. And these Australian scientists from the Daugherty Institute successfully grew the coronavirus strain, which they isolated from a patient, I believe is what they mentioned. And they pretty much had a short press conference, which was about 25 minutes long, I think. It's available on Daugherty Institute's website and also on YouTube, which pretty much they just spoke about what they found, and they answered journalists' questions, for example. And I'll put a link to that video in a description box below, so if you're interested to have a listen, have a watch, I highly recommend it. It's really, really worthwhile. So moving on now, on the point of misinformation, on the point of this infodemic, I thought I'd provide a service, or a remedy to that, I should say. And I'll mention a paper here which I found, as I mentioned at the start of this video, in which they pretty much talk about the current strain that's circulating in China and around the world. So here's the title of the paper. It's an emerging coronavirus causing pneumonia outbreak in Wuhan, China, calling for developing therapeutic and prophylactic strategies. So this was published on the 31st of January 2020, in the Journal of Emerging Microbes and Infections, which came out of Fudan University in Shanghai. So I'll just dig a bit deeper throughout this paper, and I'll explain it as best as I possibly can. It's a short paper, but basically we're now looking at publications on this strain, which is good news. Obviously, the scientists are working quite hard to figure out how it behaves and if they can, what approaches they can take to I guess, treat infections, for example, and symptoms. So we can see right here, I'll put up this image right now of this phylogenetic tree, and you can see right here, I've highlighted it in a red box. You'll see that the strain is a 2019 N coronavirus Wuhan HU1 strain. And you can see here that it's closely related to other coronavirus strains. And we can also see that it belongs to this lineage right here, this beta coronavirus lineage B. Okay, so that's quite important to understand, is that we have, it's closely associated with other coronaviruses, of course. And in addition to this data, the team also explained more about the possible approaches of blocking the virus entry into host cells. So they mentioned this by referencing the fact that this 2019 coronavirus strain is 100% identical to the SARS coronavirus strain. And hence they believe that using a currently known peptide, which they've named SC1, that this might be an effective, I guess you say, antiviral against the 2019 strain. And right here, I've put up the, you can see right here that this schematic, this illustration of the different genes. And you can see right here that at the top here, we've got this RBD, which I'll mention quite shortly. And they've got this vaccine antibodies. So meaning that they can pretty much use an antibody or several antibodies to neutralize it. And I'll go into that in more detail in a second. And I also put here an arrow towards fusion inhibitors towards the HR1 part of the S2 subunit. So basically, this layout of the gene, which I'll show you right now. So here's the layout of the representative genes of the 2019 coronavirus strain. And we can see a few abbreviations here. So we'll go through these from the start. We have the SP, which is a signal peptide, the NTD, which is the N-terminal domain, the RBD, like I just previously mentioned as being a target for antibodies, is the receptor binding domain, so very important, of course. I mean, you block the receptor binding to a host cell, then you block its entry into that cell, which is obviously a favorable target. Then you have, and that's part of the S1 subunit. So we move on to the S2 subunit. We have the FP, which is the fusion peptide, also important. HR1, the heptad repeat 1. HR2 is a heptad repeat 2. TM is transmembrane region, and CP is cytoplasmic domain. So the paper also goes on to mention a new coronavirus fusion inhibitor,